I would very much like to introduce Alex Wenham, digital asset product and strategy lead at Bloomberg. He was with us last year, and you know, Alex, you impressed us so much that we wanted to have you back. And George Theocharides, who is the chair of the Cyprus Securities regulator, but importantly, in addition, also chairs the risk committee of ESMA. And what we would like to do is come back to a theme that we discussed a bit earlier, which is the interrelationship between crypto markets and what we could say conventional security markets, traditional securities markets. We touched a bit on that in the tokenization panel, but I would like to understand a bit more what is actually going on in the market, and Alex can give us a sense of some of the strategic thinking that is emerging in the markets. But before that, George, maybe over to you first. I know that ESMA published these draft guidelines just 2 days ago about the demarcation between securities markets, products, and crypto assets. But I'd be interested to hear a little bit how you see some of the implementation challenges around the boundary between MiFID products and traditional financial institutions and the use of crypto assets.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much, Nickolas, for inviting me to this conference. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we hear you well.
Okay, thank you. So yes, thank you very much for this invitation to this very interesting conference. As you said, I'm the chair of CySec, of the Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commission, and at the same time, I chair the RiskStanding committee of ESMA. In the committee, that one of the mandates of the committee is obviously looking at financial innovation and looking at the trends in the crypto assets markets and in general in the digital markets, apart from a number of other things, obviously. So let me just highlight a few challenges that I believe are there in the implementation of MiCA, which they have to do also with this interaction between MiFID and the supervision of financial instruments, and also MiCA and the supervision of crypto assets. So the first challenge that I would like to mention here in the implementation of MiCA, which has to do with what I call the MiCA perimeter challenge. It's basically the fact that MiCA does not take into account and does not supervise fully centralized systems. And so DeFi, basically, it's one of the areas that is not captured by MiCA. However, you know, there could be cases of, let's say, partial decentralization of a system that you would need appropriate criteria of establishing basically the boundaries of what it's part of the mandate of MiCA and what's not part of the mandate of MiCA. So the fact that we do have these fully decentralized systems, DeFi, which is a market that is picking up, basically, that is not captured by the existing regulation that is coming, can lead to some challenges going forward in terms of effective supervision. The second point that I would like to make, and it has to do exactly with, you know, the types of instruments that are part of the, you know, MiCA under the crypto assets, and those that like NFTs, non-fungible tokens, for example, or tokenized financial instruments, which are part of the MiFID supervisory system. And again, there could be some hybrid arrangements of some crypto asset instruments that could have some elements related to financial instruments, and there again, we would need these appropriate criteria, basically, of separating what falls under the MiFID, the MiFID regulated instruments, and what fall under the MiCA regulated instruments. And I do think that could be another challenge. A third challenge that I see is it has to do with the so-called stable coins and asset reference tokens, which are again part of the MiCA supervision. And the point that I would like to make is about to ensure that there is enough liquidity and availability of the reserves of the assets under these so-called stable coins or asset self-reference tokens. And this has to do obviously with investor protection. So if the types of reserves in terms of availability and liquidity of those reserves are not there and are not at the appropriate level, then we would have an investor protection problem. So in that sense, and I can tell you in terms of CySec, this is something that we are examining, we are analyzing, and whether we would need any additional reporting outside of the MiCA remit, just to make sure that we tackle those particular concerns. Another challenge that I would see that I think it's central to the crypto assets is the risks of transmission channels with MiCA between one industry, the crypto assets industry, to the traditional financial system. At the moment, we don't see a lot of, and this is, I'm talking also from the perspective of chair of the RiskStanding committee, because obviously investor protection is an issue with the crypto assets because of the speculative nature of the assets, and because at this point in time there's no specific or concrete regulation. But at the same time, I'm looking at these from financial stability issues, and at the moment we don't see significant risks to financial stability. However, this is something that we have to continuously monitor. And the point that I would like to mention here again goes back to stable coins, and again it has to do with the fact that we have certain reserves that are under those stable coins, and in case, for example, we have massive redemptions for the particular stable coins, which could lead to fire sales of the reserves under those stable coins, can lead to some financial stability problems. So this is another area with the introduction of MiCA that we need to observe, obviously. And the fact that in the provisions of MiCA, we have these liquidity management tools, and we have the supervision directly by the European Banking Authority for the significant asset reference tokens. I think this is in the right direction. A fifth challenge that I would like to mention is obviously related to the technological nature of these crypto assets. The fact that the crypto custody basically refers to holding these private keys of crypto assets, and obviously there are risks in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of hacks, exploitation, weaknesses in the systems, and these are obviously things that we will need to monitor. Now, also coming to the relationship between MiFID and MiCA, one area that I can tell you that as CySec, we feel that there are certain concerns or challenges, is the fact that a firm that has a MiFID license at the moment will have the capacity and the availability basically to offer crypto assets with just the notification, because the idea is that under MiFID there is a robust framework. The due diligence is there in terms of the shareholders, the organizational structure, the board of directors, the key function positions within the organization, and so on. So with a notification, MiFID firms or asset management firms such as IFMD, so basically alternative investment fund managers or UCITS managers that provide MiFID services will have the capacity to offer crypto assets. And there, the question is, do they have the particular board in the specific entity? Do they have the capacity, the experience, the know-how in terms of understanding the technology, but also the risks that relate to these particular assets in this new industry? So that's another concern for us, and I can tell you that's a concern because we do have in Cyprus, we do have a number of investment firms that offer financial instruments, and I'm sure when MiCA comes into effect, some of them will probably want to offer crypto assets. And there is a question is whether these particular entities have the capacity and the knowledge and the know-how to offer these particular products. So that's one concern for us. So in a nutshell, these are some of the challenges and the concerns that I see. And one final point that I would like to mention is also when it comes to global crypto firms that are operating at the moment in non-regulated jurisdictions, and whether they have the compliance culture and the necessary level of compliance, I should say, to operate under this framework, under this European framework of MiCA. Obviously, we've seen what happened with FTX. That's an example that we know how it turned out. So this is another, I would say, concern and challenge in terms of the effective implementation of these new regulation. So I'll stop here, Nickolas, and back to you.
Thank you for a fascinating overview of the risks. And actually, I think the point you made about the runs or insufficient assets in the stabilization mechanism of stablecoins was also raised in an IMF report, I think, just literally yesterday. So thanks very much. Alex, you've patiently listened, but one of the points that George raised was, are kind of existing MiFID firms, investment firms, sufficiently sophisticated, experienced with dealing with crypto assets as part of their investment strategy? Also conscious that you're, through the risk committee, fairly soon publishing some analysis around this, and maybe just a few words on that, which would be interesting to the audience.
Sure, yes. That's, as I mentioned at the beginning, under the RiskStanding Committee, part of the mandate is to analyze and monitor this market as well as a number of other markets. So I'll very briefly, I'll explain basically some of the trends, the recent trends that we have observed in this market. First, size has been increasing in the market. Total market cap by end of December was at 1.6 trillion. This is 100% up since the end of 2022. The historical peak was in November 2021 at 2.6 trillion. Prices have rebounded largely, driven by the expectations that the Bitcoin spot ETFs would receive the SEC's approval, which they did receive the SEC's approval by January the 10th. There was a rebound in trading volumes as well. When it comes to stable coins, the size of the stable coin market is small. It's stable over the years, around 120 billion. Tether is the number one by far, more than 80% of the market. New stable coins have failed to gain ground from the dominant one, which is Tether. DeFi is a market that has growing, small, still small in absolute volumes, around 50 billion by December of 2023. DeFi exploits, which are the losses from hacking into the into the DeFi protocols are high, almost 1 billion lost during the last 5 months. We have a risk scoring for the market at ESMA, for any market and for the crypto market. The highest level of scores in terms of very high risk goes to liquidity, market, internal contagion, and operational risks. These are the ones that they top the level of the risks, the highest level of risks. As I mentioned at my earlier response, we have not observed financial stability issues, mainly because of the small size of the market, but also the fact that we have not observed this interconnectedness between the crypto markets and the traditional markets, but this requires monitoring. However, because of the Bitcoin ETFs, and because I know there's also the effort for Ethereum ETFs as well to be approved by the SEC. That's a concern that can lead to linkages between the traditional financial industry and the crypto space. So basically, external contagion. The limits, though, or the inflows that we have seen in these ETFs was not to the extent of the expectations. The expectations were for much higher volumes or inflows into these particular ETFs. And what we have seen, I mean, the data that I have is that in the first 10 days, we had 1.1 billion basically going into these ETFs, the 10 ETFs, which is much lower than what was expected at the beginning. However, this is something that we will need to closely monitor. And by the way, because of the lower expectations, what we have seen is that Bitcoin and Ether, which are the two dominant cryptocurrencies or crypto assets, have fallen by 14% and 12% since January 10th. So these are some of the highlights and the developments in these markets that we have been and we will be publishing soon basically these developments in the markets.
Thank you very much. Very interesting trends. I just want to see, is Alex back? No, we hear from our technical team he's not. We will contact him and see whether we can integrate him separately into a later point of the program. Apologies for that. With that, George, I don't know whether you've gained yourself another 2 or 3 minutes. If you've got some additional reflections, maybe last reflections from that report, you gave very interesting statistical data, and you already highlighted at the beginning some of the concerns. Maybe are there 2 or 3 preliminary conclusions that you draw from a supervisory perspective as to what that might mean for future work for ESMA?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that, and I know that my colleague Carlo was in a previous panel basically discussing, and Carlo is actually the one that is chairing the Digital Finance Standing Committee of ESMA, where basically they look at all the level 2 and level 3 legislation that needs to come out, all the consultation papers with the markets, and there is a lot of work that is going on. There are still certain aspects that need to be analyzed and thoroughly examine. For example, reverse solicitation. In my mind, that's a concern basically, not only for the crypto assets basically. What does it mean, reverse solicitation, but also for the investment firms basically, and how do you monitor this reverse solicitation? Overall, I think we're on the right track. The ESMA, I can tell you that ESMA and the NCAs that are part of ESMA, we're getting ready for this market already. Most of, as you know, a number of European jurisdictions, they do have there is some type of supervision of the crypto assets. For example, a number of European firms, such as European jurisdictions, such as Cyprus, we have under the 5th AML directive, we have a registration of the crypto asset service providers, which is much more than a registration. There is an extensive due diligence that we're doing in terms of the organizational structure, in terms of the shareholding structure, in terms of all the policies, the procedures, the manuals, the technology involved in terms of these firms, basically. But there's no passporting at the moment. So it's a local legislation, so they can offer their services in Cyprus or to Cyprus. And if they want to offer it in another European country, then they need to basically go and see what the requirements are in that particular country. Some countries in Europe, for example, Malta, has already a much more developed level of expertise and framework, basically, in terms of those crypto assets. And so it's not everybody's at the same starting point. Not every country is at the same starting point. But the effort basically is, through all this work that we're doing, to come to a level that we are basically, when January of 2025 comes, we are at the same starting point, and there is to a large extent supervisory convergence, because we need for these markets to succeed and to develop, we need supervisory convergence. And that's an effort not only for the crypto assets, I mean, for the investment firms as well. There's always the effort to achieve this supervisory convergence. But I think we're on the right track.
No, thanks, George. Alex, we've got a little challenge, because I like to normally listen to you at length, and we've run out of time. But I know you can be very succinct. Can I give you 5-6 minutes to try and answer the question, and we give you more time next time around, I promise. Just give me a few cents of what the trends you're seeing in the market and some of the challenges, and then we do need to move on to the DORA panel.
Of course. And look, thank you for having me for a second time. Yeah, technical difficulties aside, hopefully there'll be a third time. So when we talk about institutional adoption of crypto assets at Bloomberg, we need to make a couple of kind of points clear. We are not evangelists for the crypto market. We try to achieve here at Bloomberg is to be the preeminent cross-asset market data provider in terms of news, analytics, pricing, and everything that market participants would need to be active within a market. I think when you consider the evolution of crypto assets in general as its own unique asset class, I would say that the genie's out of the bottle, and it's not going back, as we've heard from various regulatory authorities and how they're looking at the retail space of service providers. So, for us, the biggest question when you think about crypto is it's not a homogenous group of assets. There's some assets that are more effective and more institutional grade than others. And it's not like you just connect to one exchange like the NASDAQ and get a whole lot of stocks that have been listed through our regulatory approved process. When you think about the crypto assets that you want to cover, we've had to take a really data-driven approach to fundamentally define what are the institutional attributes of crypto that are super important. So, at Bloomberg, we really, look at 4 characteristics. Can you custody it? Does it trade on reputable venues? Is it big, and is it liquid? And those sort of 4 criteria really decide the crypto asset coverage that we have on the Bloomberg terminal. If we then think about wider institutional adoption, perhaps you've answered the question, which crypto, you then start to get into some pretty basic challenges, to be fair, that in traditional markets, we just haven't, we kind of forgot existed. Things like, how do you describe Bitcoin? What type of reference data do you need to have to describe Bitcoin in order to be able to set that up properly, within your order management system, how to trade that effectively, how to settle that effectively. Things like identifiers. We talked about stable coins. There's many different identifiers out there for different crypto assets that look at different characteristics. At Bloomberg, when we think about identifiers, we have one for the asset, let's call it USDC. We have one for the asset at an exchange or an asset in a pair. So let's say USDC versus Euro. And then we have USDC Euro at, say, Kraken as 3 different levels of thinking about an identifier. But when you think about USDC, it exists on Ethereum, Polygon, and various other blockchain platforms, all of which could potentially have a different identifier. But again, this stuff hasn't really been sorted. So there's lots of that kind of fundamentally important parts of data, I would say, for crypto assets that really still need to be thought out. More broadly outside of data, I think the ultimate kind of adoption of this market poses some challenges for the traditional asset manager. And I think the first question is, where do you allocate crypto in your portfolio? When we look at the kind of breadth of investment strategies that are out there today, you've got your VC investment where, traditional investors can make allocations. You have your kind of hedge fund investment strategy where they've taken traditional hedge fund strategies, say from equity, and applying them in a crypto world. And then, of course, you have like the long only sort of listed fund part of the market, which, broadly speaking right now is a retail phenomenon. So I think the first real question for asset managers is, where does it belong in a portfolio? And once you kind of make that decision, the next question is, how do I trade it? How do I hedge it? And these questions start to create, challenges given market structure. I would say that when I started in this role 2.5 years ago, there's been lots of evolutions in some of these kind of red flags that traditional investors would look at. Some of them are being answered by various regulated firms around the world, thinking about, say, regulated derivatives exchanges or option exchanges. So, there's a data puzzle that I think still is coming into play. There is a reference data component of that. There's a pricing component of that. That's kind of working its way and getting solved. I think when you think about the market structure element, again, there's regulated venues that are coming through, but that also relies on succinct regulation to be in place for these venues to kind of exist. So look, broadly speaking, outside of market structure and data, the question really is, where does it belong in a traditional asset management portfolio? That doesn't stop high net worth individuals, family offices, and as I said, various hedge funds being involved at the moment, but the broader institutional adoption, particularly within crypto markets, I think has these challenges.
Actually, excellent, Alex. I give you more time next time, although I don't necessarily believe you need it. That was a very succinct, good presentation. Thanks for your support. Thanks for coming back in despite the technical issue. And George, thank you very much for laying out like an onion the different layers of complexity that you're currently still facing in bringing crypto assets into the securities markets, and how to look at the boundary between MiCA and MiFID. Fascinating, despite the issues we had. Thanks very much indeed, and speak to both of you very soon.